Parliament is a house of talking. Parley means in Latin or French, to talk. You talk, you jaw, with a view to arriving at a consensus. But even when you don't arrive at a consensus, somebody wins and somebody loses. These are all parliamentary actions. But what we are saying that we have 3 arms of government. Each one should know their role and should be willing and ready to carry that thing within the principles of the law. When that happens, then we are moving for chaos. The executive should have laid all these documents before now. But even late as those documents were, once it gets to Parliament, leadership of Parliament also has a role to play. And besides, everybody has rights in Parliament to talk. You cannot stop, you put up a microphone of a leader. But all the presence of the arm of the police really heightens the situation, heightens the temperature, and already there was security threat. So what I want this Parliament to do, this has happened. Parliament should go back to the drawing board and now see what all our procedures have been breached and what are the consequences.
Engagement of other members of the House, I mean in the opposition. Definitely in Parliament, the rubric is allow the opposition to have its say. You can have your way because most times you have the majority. When it comes to voting, you can have your way. But that is not to say because you have the majority, you should bulldoze or bamboozle things that are not supposed to be. Parliament is a house of processes and procedure. That's why the standing order speaks to all the process and procedure. Even when you are right, if you miss the process and procedure, you can be called out of order. And what I hated on that day, in terms of the 2 press conferences, both the opposition conference and the government, I was disturbed by the presence of the speaker and the clerk holding a joint conference with the government bench. I mean, when you look at the roles of the role of the speaker and the role of the clerk, they shouldn't be publicly, showcasing their support for their party. And that discussion was a bit, out of place.
Yes, subscribe. You always dey watch we program them, but you not subscribe yet to the channel. All wetin you get for do, press this red subscribe button, and then you come over here and press this bell. To the bell option, press this one with all. It don't done. It no get for cost you anything. When you do this, na sign for show say you dey support we for make we do more. Thank you for we don help we for share this program. Yeah, God bless you.
This is Wake Up Sierra Leone on Africa Young Voices Television. Don't forget to drop your comments and questions on issues being discussed on our AYV Media Empire Facebook page.
Right, and now as we continue the conversation on the controversial scenes at Parliament on Monday at the Freetown International Conference Centre, Bintumani, when the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Anthony Brewer, laid the Census Act of 2002 statutory instrument number 4 of 2021. Now, the sitting, which was conveyed by President Julius Maada Bio, was disrupted by some opposition members who questioned the legality of the sitting, citing certain processes and procedures which are slated in the standing orders. So this morning, to get their own sides of the issue, we have Honorable Ibrahim Bundu, who is the former majority leader in the House of Parliament for the APC. We're also expecting to have Honorable Bernadette Lahai online. She's the former minority leader in the House of Parliament for the Sierra Leone People's Party, and when we get her online, we will let you know. But we do have Honorable Bundu with us this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Right, I'm sure you've been following the situation, and you indeed saw what happened at Parliament. We saw a brief press statement from Honorable Chernoba after the incident, and he made his position clear. So what is the position of the All People's Congress regarding what happened at Bintumani on Monday?
Well, definitely, don't think I'm here to state the position of the All People's Congress, but rather because I think Cherno has done his bit as the minority leader right
for
now,
the party
and the opposition. And I think I saw that interview. He did it together with the other political parties in the opposition, you see. But what I saw in Bintumani, I want to speak to what I call what is right, and I don't want to talk about who is right or who is wrong. I want to talk about what is right, and you know, to let people know what actually transpired, in my own view.
Right. Now, let me just frame the question, because what opposition members are saying is that the Speaker did not consult the opposition leader and the clerk to discuss, you know, the schedule for what will be what will make up the meeting for that day. And the Speaker also made his position clear that because the President summoned the meeting, he did put out a notice, but it wasn't compulsory for him to consult with the clerk and the other members in a meeting before they went to Bintumani.
Okay, well, to clarify that, Section 86(1) gives the power to the President to summon Parliament at any time. And 86(1) and 2 were fully complied with. I say so because all the members of Parliament were there. So 86(1) is really not in conflict with what happened in the well. Now, when the parliamentarians were there, I'm sure they had their other paper to see the content of the, I think it's from that content of the other paper that the quarrel ensued by quoting Standing Order 4, subsection 3. And it speaks to consultations and other things that should have been done. So Parliament, we have a constitutional section that we can refer to as Section 94, which gives Parliament the power to regulate itself. And one of the regulatory instruments that we use is the Standing Order. So Section 86 is actually out of the argument here.
Section 86 of the Constitution.
Of the Constitution. There was an emergency summon, which gives, and the Constitution gives that right to His Excellency the President, and that call was heeded to. All the members of Parliament were there, the opposition and the... So now let's talk about what happened in the well of Parliament. The opposition leader got up to under SO 43 to remind the Speaker that they were not consulted fully. Mind you, it's an emergency situation. So be that as it may, we have in Parliament what we could employ as pre-legislative engagement. That is, before even coming to the well, because of the emergency situation, I think it could have been very, very prudent. Or, you know, if it was an oversight, nothing stops Parliament with the powers of Section 94 to regulate themselves, to stand down Parliament, go and do some consultation, do some housekeeping, then you come back instead of what happened. So that which happened on that day could have been prevented, in my view.
But how do you think it could have been prevented? Because yesterday we were talking to Honorable Abdul Kabo, and he was saying one of the reasons why they got angry is because most times the ruling party acts with impunity when it comes to passing certain laws. So he said that is why they were angry. What do you think about this?
Well, he should have been in a better position to comment more. You say people were acting with the ruling party was acting with impunity. I think the next question would have been how.
He said normally that is what they do, even in the well of parliament. Whenever they walk out, they just go ahead and do whatever they want to do, even with their without their approval.
Well, walking out, you are really walking away from what you're supposed to do. But the situation I saw on that day, the minority leader, the opposition leader, the main opposition, called the attention of the speaker under Standing Order 4, subsection 3, which is the right thing to do. And because the speaker did not maybe overrule him, to give him the chance to actually state what he wanted to state. And I think some of it was that we want to have consultations. The standing order dictates that on a situation like this where you have to lay papers, there are certain process and procedures that are to be followed. Since those procedures are not followed, maybe that was why he raised his objection under SO 34. That's a point of observation, because when you talk about laying of paper in Parliament, we have the standing order that 18 that speaks to the process and procedure on how to lay paper. And I saw the other paper. There was a provision for laying of papers, and also the consultation, the prior consultations before that, before the actual discussion in terms of an emergency situation occurs, because that sitting was an emergency sitting. So that tells you that everybody was ill prepared. I mean, I'm not sure about the owners of the bill, that is the ruling government, but the opposition will definitely say, this is an emergency, we were not prepared for it. So if we come, let us be given the opportunity to have a tete-a-tete before the enactment of whatever.
But now, in his own press conference, the speakers, made several points about, one, like you've said, the situation being one of emergency, wherein the president summoned Parliament, and he mentioned the Constitution being the supreme law of the land, thereby, obviously overruling certain standing orders, given that it was an emergency situation. Now, do you think that is justification for what happened in Parliament?
No, that is why I started with clarifying what 86, which he quoted, was. 86.1 speaks to an emergency situation where the president can call through the speaker, Parliament. And that was done, and all the parliamentarians were there. So 86.1 is terminated right there. You not bring it again as an excuse to, you now begin to talk about the standing order and what gives that power to standing order. That's why I quoted section 94. Parliament has the power to regulate itself for the smooth and running of its proceedings.
But let's take a look at how members of Parliament who objected to the proceedings reacted to the entire thing. Now we saw them throwing tables, tearing papers, and the whole scene became chaotic, and one would even go to the extent to say violent, because some were throwing blows and slaps, and we saw that incident occurring in the Bintumani Conference Center. Now, how do you position members of Parliament who are meant to be, examples and acting honorably, or so to speak, in that entire scene?
Well, preventing this situation would have been the best. And I say so because when opposition members see the government or the speaker trying to guard the situation, to prevent them from having their say and trying to have their way, I mean, tempers do flare. I mean, that is not to say what was done or the reaction of I want to justify the reaction of the parliamentarian, but preventing those kind of situation, could have been better. I mean, if the vocation of SO4 subsection 3 was heeded to, and even if the section was not quoted expeditiously under those circumstances, especially in an emergency situation. Mind you, the census discussion informally has been going around. We all saw social media and other media how the opposition was reacting. That should have been a basis for which, when an emergency situation such as the parliamentary sitting was called, the best thing to do is to have engaged the members of the opposition, because we already have hints, very good hints about what is going, about their reaction to the census. So I see no reason why mind you, the bill is a government bill. It's a government motion. And the leader of the House, the leader of government business, has the full responsibility to ensure that that bill goes through. So whichever way, in terms of why, because the end justifies the means. You want to ensure that your bill passed. If I'm piloting such a bill, the first thing I want to do is to engage members of the opposition, especially so when you have got a lot of hints, opposing the process and procedures. So you definitely don't have any excuse not to engage, because the question is, you want to make sure your bill, it's your responsibility. Members of the opposition are there to oppose, although procedurally, they will come up with all sorts of what I call filibustering issues, so that they will get their way. That is opposition. I mean, that's the role of the opposition.
All right,
so therefore, you, the owner of the bill, is a government motion, and you want to make sure you help your government as leader of government business to ensure that. So if it means you lobbying, it means you cajoling, you got to do that. That's your role.
All right, talking about procedures for certain actions, Honorable Kandekola Yunkela, during one of his interviews, said because of the way the ruling party acts at times, acts with impunity, he was warning that they should be careful, because certain precedents that are being set will actually be used against them some other day or by other bad leaders. How do you think things like this should be how can we work around things like this when the ruling party acts with impunity? How can we work around things like this to ensure that things like this just come to an end? So in order to stop bad leadership in the future.
Yes, if I can take you back to after the incident during the election of Speaker, and other incident during the laying of people, or during the discussion for the COI, all of those were very ugly incidents. I think that was what necessitated when an EU-sponsored project called leadership training. I was one of the facilitators, and one of the things we emphasized, I particularly emphasized during that period, was engagement of other members of the House, I mean in the opposition. Definitely in Parliament, the rubric is allow the opposition to have its say. You can have your way, because most times you have the majority. When it comes to voting, you can have your way. But that is not to say because you have the majority, you should bulldoze or bamboozle things that are not supposed to be. Parliament is a house of processes and procedure. That's why the standing order speaks to all the process and procedure. Even when you are right, if you miss the process and procedure, you can be called out of order. And what I hated on that day, in terms of the two press conferences, both the opposition conference and the government, I was disturbed by the presence of the speaker and the clerk holding a joint conference with the government bench. I mean, when you look at the roles of the role of the speaker and the role of the clerk, they shouldn't be publicly, showcasing their support for their party. And that discussion was a bit, out of place. I mean, the government bench has its own executive, the leader of government business, the deputy leaders. They have their own leadership. That is for them to debate between them, the government bench, and the opposition. Well, you, the speaker, I'm not saying you don't have a right to call, but the joint press conference, if he was going to call a press conference, that all the members of the House should have been present, so that they will be exchanging, But when you see the clerk coming up with some judgments, and the speaker was defending, justifying that the standing order is a subsidiary legislation. But in this circumstance, it's no longer a subsidiary, because the section he's quoting, 76, has been fully complied with. So now it left with the next step, which is how the process and procedures, and this is the supreme law in the world. We can even suspend it. This is all, this is a document that regulates how Parliament does its thing when issues like, issues come up. So if without this, we cannot effectively operate in Parliament, So to tie it with Section 86, I believe it was not the right thing.
But here's another question. Now, opposition, as you said, all members of Parliament were present that day when they were summoned. They did attend to the call.
They complied, yes.
So, can you tell what exactly they thought was going to happen? Because indeed, if you're summoned and there's going to be a parliamentary sitting, then you must be aware that there's going to be a discussion. Are you aware of whether they indeed tried to have the conversation before appearing in Parliament, or did they go there purposely to disrupt the entire process?
From what I heard from the majority leader and leader of government business, yes, he sent the order paper highlighting the agenda for the day. That's the order paper. So they knew they were coming to a sitting wherein papers are going to be laid, other procedures are going to be followed. But because they are not in agreement with certain process and procedures, or they were requesting for certain process and procedures to be followed before the sitting proper, that was why they invoked Standing Order 4, subsection 3.
What are some of the procedures that they were expecting?
Well, I mean, the procedures are quoted from the standing orders to let the emergency discussion be started from outside of the well of Parliament. That is pre-legislative engagement, behind the scenes. That is what we do, and it has been working very effectively. I used it extensively during my time, and that was the reason why some of these incidents were in the first place being avoided. Not that we don't have our rancors, and I will take you through 2015 census has similar tension. A lot of things happen. A lot of things happen in the sense that we were doing the things we were doing things like doing the boundary delimitation, doing cartography and all of this. But procedurally, the law should have been laid first, because that is the law that should give you the basis for which you are going to operate. And if you look at the situation currently, this particular statutory instrument should have been laid from last year.
So
when the census discussion, when the census thing came up, a proclamation was made. That was the time. Well, it was not done. But be that as it may, if it comes now under an emergency situation, you still need to go through the normal procedures that is contained in the standing order.
All right. So with what happened on that day, do you think them skipping these procedures, do you think it was an act of impunity or ignorance?
I will not call it ignorance, but you know, government bench like to have their way. And if you want to have your way the way they did, so it can be viewed as an act of impunity. Yes.
And if we're looking at, you know, what the standing orders say about, you know, the conduct of members of parliament, what are the provisions in terms of, you know, how parliamentarians should conduct themselves? Are there any disciplinary actions for, you know, what happened on that day?
Well, yes. I mean, if you go to the Constitution, Section 100, if, in the opinion of the Speaker, some statements are made that run counter the dictates of disciplinary things that are supposed to be observed in Parliament, the decorous things, then there is also a process and procedure. You know, you go through there is a committee called not disciplinary committee, or, you know, there's a committee that is responsible for looking into those matters, examine it, and that committee will bring its recommendation to the House, and if it's voted in favor, then the attendant penalties can be brought by the...
Still on the proper conduct of parliamentarians, and earlier I was asking about, the conduct of parliamentarians and how, let's talk about the area of mentorship generally. Is there any provision for mentorship for these parliamentarians, wherein people like you that have been within the well of parliament for a long time, trying to control the younger ones coming in, trying to mentor them on how to behave, on proper behavior within the wells of parliament?
Definitely so, and that responsibility should not be shifted to Parliament alone. Even the political parties, I mean, they gave us their symbols to go to Parliament. All of this experience I'm talking about today is, you know, I went through a political party. I was not an independent candidate. So if now I'm retired, and I'm also not even tired, you know, it is a responsibility of political parties to even put those kind of mechanism in place, so that once in a while we meet with, you know, and at especially a controversial issue such as this, the political parties have that responsibility to call us, you know, to really see what we can do in terms of, you know, one situation, because these are not new situations. I've gone through it. There was this census thing in 2015, and certain procedures were not met. At the end of the day, we discussed those behind the scenes to a point. Even the then electoral commissioner Mfa had to apologize, you know, for doing certain things, because, mind you, the executive has its own role. You know, the judiciary has its own role. That was why you saw the Attorney General was there, so that certain legal things can be clarified when they arise during those discussions.
So, who do you think should be blamed for what happened on that day? Is it the political parties, or should the parliamentarians be blamed individually for their actions?
A lot of these parliamentarians are new. They need this kind of mentorship regularly. You see, I keep reminding you about census issues that rose tension in 2015. That should have been a lesson through which we should be learning now, because it happened during our time. We were in government then. So if a similar thing is happening, it is the role of the political parties and even parliament, you know, to call the current minority leader who served in parliament. He has a responsibility to call us, even informally, to say, please let us come and engage. This is the situation, you know. But most of these engagements are not done, you know. I believe if we revert to bringing people who have certain experiences in such as what I'm talking about, I think it will help, both at party level and also at parliament level.
So basically the parties and also the parliament, they are to blame, because when you say that consultations are not being done with older people like you.
Now, the bill was laid anyway, despite the chaos and, you know, all the controversy and the, you know, fighting and whatever happened there in Parliament. Now, since that has, you know, the bill has been laid and we've moved past that, is there anything that could be done? Because clearly the opposition members have their reservations, not only about the census itself, but about these procedures that were taken to lay the bill in Parliament. As at where we are now, is there any way that those actions could be reversed?
Oh yes, the bill did not come to law on the day it was laid. It's going to lay there for 21 days. And the next procedure is if any member in the opposition or any member of parliament comes up to say, we want this bill debated. Because mind you, you don't amend a statutory instrument. You either throw it away by its content, the full content, or you adopt it. That's why it's laid there for any objection in 21 days. So I'm sure there is provision in the standing order and even the constitution for the opposition parties, I mean, who have concerns, to evoke those relevant sections by calling for a debate, you know, through the speaker. You can even file what I call a private member's motion, address it to the clerk of the House, stating your reasons for that private member's motion in tandem with the statutory instrument. Then the speaker is under obligation.
So if these processes are there and you know, these options are available to members of parliament who oppose to certain provisions in the bill, why do you think there was such a big fuss over the laying of the bill? Was it a matter of the procedures that were thought to be eroded by the speaker?
It was. Procedurally, when short bills, the emergency call, I think, speaks to a proclamation, and it should be the only item parliamentarily that should have been there. But because the other paper contained other things like laying of instruments and other items, that was also another. That was why Standing Order 18 was also evoked, you know. That day, I think if they had dealt with the proclamation, because that's a new proclamation. There had been a proclamation on this census last year, but the circumstance was such that it was, you know, certain things were not done. So quietly, they just, you know, so they are now coming up with a new, because when you do a proclamation, it has a timeline through which certain things should have been done, and that was not done. So if you are coming to actually restart the whole process, just make sure those mistakes that were made during the first proclamation are not made again. But so if for any reason they resurface again, all you need is to engage.
Now, what should be the role and responsibility of parliamentarians? Because, like you said, the president, for instance, had made an announcement of a proposed census since last year, and there has not been a bill in Parliament for the census. There have been dates for the census from December to April 19th when the bill was laid. So what should have been the role of Parliament or responsibility of parliamentarians to make sure the proper procedures are followed by the executive who is, proposing a census?
Well, firstly, before you bring a bill to Parliament, you have a ministry or department that is responsible to guide you with the process and procedures of Parliament. You may choose to discuss it with the leader. That is why you have a leader of government business to say we are proposing to bring such a bill to Parliament, and what are some of the things that you are expecting? Those are discussions that you can hold. But I'm sure the executive branch, the branch or the department that is responsible to tailor this or to pilot this to Parliament has some questions to answer there, because if we don't receive any document, we don't discuss it normally. But because you have an executive in Parliament, you call the majority leader and leader of government business, it is your responsibility as an executive to discuss with him in an informal note so that he will guide you through the process.
All right. Let me bring you back on the issue of the census that is causing all of this issue. What is your take on the upcoming or the proposed census?
I mean, as long as the processes and procedures are not breached, both the constitutional provisions. I mean, the president has the right to call for a midterm census as provided for by the law, the Census Act. I mean, and there is also a provision in the Constitution that speaks to that. So as a lawmaker, I always look for areas, just like lawyers, they always look for areas where you fail to comply. Then they bring it up as a technical point, and that could cost you your case. So this is what happened. I mean, if the president in his own, especially the now opposition party did the census, and he might have his own reservation as a new government, So calling that midterm census is not a surprise to us, because even during the debates that ensued during the 2015 census, they have their reservations, they have their comments, especially when it followed the delimitation of boundaries. It's also the additional districts and the chiefdoms.
You were a member of Parliament at that time. In fact, leader of the majority in Parliament.
Right.
And you see these reservations coming up now about the processes that were followed in the 2015 census. Now, did they not come up in your time in office?
Of course, they came up when we were doing our own. We did not do a midterm census. After Akaba did his own census sometime, 10 years down the road, we did our own in 2015. So there was no controversy in terms of a midterm, because there was no suspicion in terms of what was done. I believe they have political or other reasons to call for a midterm. So as certain misgivings, they would have been told, So,
but even we had a statistics ceremony here on Tuesday, a rep from Statistics Ceremony, the communications director, and even they have clarified that there were some fundamental issues with the data that was presented in the 2015 census. Were you not privy to that information before, moving on to the boundary delimitations, having Falaba and Karine districts?
You see, anytime there is a change of administration, you all saw what happened. A lot of changes, even in those offices. Statistics, most of the people who are the key players are currently not there. So you have new people coming in. They will have a way of interpreting certain things to say, because mind you, it's a very huge task to hold a census. It's not, and it attracts a lot of funding. But if all of their observation has some political, the things they want to achieve, they can come up with it.
When you say political things they want to achieve, what do you mean?
In politics, you want to make sure you, especially so when we are now moving towards an election, you want to have a very clear way on how you're going to emerge victorious. And if that midterm census happens to be one of the ways by which you think, if I call a midterm census, I'll be able to ascertain clearly what happened in 2015 and tie it with what should happen now. Because like I say, a lot of things happened at the 2015. The boundaries were delimited, districts were increased, and politically, there will be suspicion right there.
Okay.
I mean, if we are on their own side, we will think the same.
You rightly said conducting a census takes a lot of fund, a lot of resources. Now, taking into consideration the state of the economy, coming out of COVID, trying to recover the economy, do you think this is the right time for us to get a census?
Well, from the issues you raised, the economic situation, the COVID, and all of this, believe me, I will go with you that this is not the right time. But politics has its own interpretation.
You keep bringing up politics. And
I'm a politician. Sorry.
The point you made previously, spoke to, you alluded to certain things that could be done, in terms of conducting a census and aligning that with political gains. So the question here is, was that the strategy of the All People's Congress then? And do you think that the current government wants to use what you have said is a, political manipulation, or as you've described it?
If the statistician general or the technical people would have been ones from a technical point of view that should call census by the dictate of the Constitution, the situation would have been different. But now you are talking about the politician, the president, giving the power to call, I know he will consult with the technical, but politics being what it is.
Statistics Sierra Leone have said that the call for a midterm census came from them. That is what they said. No. They said they made the call, and of course the president proclaimed.
Through who? Through the president?
Yes, they said they looked at the data, they looked at the information.
And advised the president?
Yes.
Okay. And
that is what they've said. They've said there are questionable things in the 2015 census.
Okay.
The data did not align with certain things. I think, according to Ansumano, who was here, he said some data was recorded with names.
Okay.
And others with numbers, and so they couldn't merge. There were technical issues which he raised up, and that was the reason he said they have called for another census.
It could be right. I'm sure even the president, he must be advised. His cabinet must be advised on the advantage and disadvantage of the ones you are highlighting. But that is not to say that advice don't have its own political undercurrent. You see, definitely they will look at it as well. In fact, that is the reason why you have two new districts in the north, which is the stronghold of the opposition. So let's see how we can correct it. You see, so we are on the same page.
All right.
We have Honorable Bernadette Laha, who is the former minority leader in Parliament. We have her on the line.
Yes, we have her on the line now. Good morning. Can you hear us?
Good morning. I can hear you very clearly.
All right. I'm sure you've been following the conversation, and we've been discussing the events that unfolded at the Bintumani Conference Center on Monday. Now, what is your general view about the entire situation?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I was very disappointed and I was very dismayed by the events of that fateful day, that fateful Monday, where we saw members of parliament abusing each other, some being beaten, and police were all over the place, which for me was unacceptable. So I was very disappointed. As members of parliament and the highest seat of lawmaking, we expect much more than what happened. When members of parliament are sworn in, they take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. Every morning when parliament sits before the business of the day starts, there is also a prayer. And that prayer says that MP should set aside all personal interests above, put everything above the earth, so that they can serve the country and the Constitution. So what happened that day was very sad, and we hope that this sort of behavior will not, because, you know, the whole thing was not only a Sierra Leonean issue. Everything was on social media, and I'm sure the whole world was watching. This is not a good example for Sierra Leone.
Okay, taking into consideration the basis of all the chaos at Bintumani that they were in, they were complaining that certain things were not going right and that the ruling party, SLPP, was acting with impunity. You're earlier talking about the prayer of the parliamentarians' prayer that they start whatever session with, that they should put the country's interests first, and also in our national pledge, we vow to serve our country faithfully at all times. Do you think parliamentarians, or let me say generally politicians, actually go by this prayer or go by this pledge?
Well, I would say that not always, because we don't want to just bundle all politicians as homogeneous groups. You have had very good, conscientious, God-fearing politicians who everything they do, they think of their conscience, they think of their country and the impact of their activities on the country and on the people they serve. So I will not say every parliamentarian has been guilty of that, but definitely, you know, we have had swearing, you know, they have not followed the pledge, nor the oath of allegiance that they take before becoming a member of parliament, upholding the Constitution and putting the interests of the country first. That is what I would say. But let me say that, you see, in discussing this issue of the Monday sittings and the tracking, we need to go back a few steps down the line to ask ourselves, how did we get to this? How did Parliament get to the stage where we were at each other's throat? Again, you know, when you have been in Parliament for some time, you become an institutional memory, or you are supposed to become an institutional memory. This is not the first time this Parliament had this type of issue. In the 2012-2017 Parliament, we had a similar situation. Again, around the issue of census and constituency delineation. I remember that after the census, NET needed to have the data for them to start preparing for the election. That means the constituency delineation, the voter registration, and all of those things. But before even you start, certain laws have to be brought to Parliament to trigger the activity. And there is supposed to be a proclamation from the president, for example, on the date of the elections, which will now set in motion the activities of NEC. I remember that NEC had received the raw data from Statistics Sierra Leone after the census, but all the necessary statutory instruments were not placed. But they had already started on the activity. We were in opposition then. We called the attention of NEC. Hasn't gone maybe 5 or 6 months into the activity without any of these documents being released. So we had to call NEC. I remember, we had a pre-legislative meeting and then we came to the well of Parliament. We had to call the attention of UNFA once again that they have put the cart before the horse. But knowing or agreeing, recognizing that there was a constitutional breach, UNFA had to apologize. And together with the government and the opposition, we now have to find a middle ground for us to proceed for the interest of the country. So I think it's the same thing. Whether meantime census or the census itself, certain documents would have to be laid even before you start any activity. It has to be laid for 21 days so that the public is aware, it can stimulate debate, and if need be, Parliament can move motion for that statutory instrument to be discussed. So this is where I think is the genesis of all what we're talking about.
All right, stay with us, Honorable Bernadette Lahai. We're going to take a short break with
Yes, subscribe. You always the watch we program them, but you not subscribe yet to the channel. All what you get for do, press this red subscribe button, and then you come over here and press this bell. To the bell option, press this one with all. And done. And no get for cost you anything. When you do this, na sign for show say you the support we for make we do more. Thank you for your help we for share this program. Yeah, God bless you.
Welcome back. The program is Wake Up Sierra Leone here on Africa Young Voices Television, and we're on the line with Honorable Bernadette Lahai, the former minority leader for the House of Parliament for SLPP, and also Honorable Ibrahim Bundu, former majority leader in the House of Parliament. Hello, Madam Lahai, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm with you still.
Okay, in continuation of our discussion on what happened that day at Bintumani, who do you think should be blamed? Should we blame it on Parliament or lack of discipline of the parliamentarians?
I have told you that we have to go down the lane to know or to analyze what brought the events of that day. There have been omissions. The omissions we are now being corrected on that day by laying those statutory instruments. These statutory instruments come from one, the President's proclamation, and then, of course, Statistics Sierra Leone under the ministry, which is normally the Ministry of Development, would also prepare documents which will be laid also in Parliament by the responsible ministry. So this did not happen. So in the first place, we have to know from the executive why this did not happen. Okay, be that as it may, it has happened. The president under 86(1) may summon a meeting of Parliament at any time. And it's the same thing also in standing orders Standing Order 43A, which says in the case, which says the president may at any time summon a meeting of parliament. So there is no problem about that. There should be no contradiction about that. It is clear. But when you look at Standing Order 94, 1 and 4, it also prescribes how Parliament regulates the proceedings of Parliament. That is what gave birth to the Standing Order. The Standing Order is very explicit. It gives effect to all the provisions in the Constitution. So then, if the President now has for an emergency meeting, then there is a procedure in which you roll out that meeting, which is what is in Standing Order 43B. It says, in the case of an emergency of which notice is given to Mr. Speaker by the President, a meeting may be summoned on such notice as Mr. Speaker may determine in consultation with the majority and minority leaders of the House and the Clerk of Parliament. Having determined such, then notice can be given of such meeting to the members of Parliament in a manner as the urgency of the matter permits. So I think that was where we had all of this matter. The President had summoned this emergency meeting, and a notice of meeting for that day, for that Monday, was sent out. The contention is that the Speaker, according to Standing Order 43A, should summon that notice in consultation with the majority and minority leaders and the clerk. I think that was where the bone of contention was on that Monday morning. But I will always say is that the approach is very important. You can have a bad situation, but if you take a human faith approach with respect and dignity of the other person, you can really forestall a bad situation happening. You can have a good situation, but if the approach is not such that you do not consider the respect or the position of the other person, it can degenerate to chaos. I have told you that we have similar situations in Parliament, in the last Parliament, on the same census and the designation of constituencies. These documents were not late. We were in opposition. We raised it up. It was a very serious situation. We were very much vocal in the free leg, but at the end of the day, somebody realized this mistake, and apologies were made. But then also, appeal was also made as to how to move forward. So for me, everything boils down to the appeal. Maybe there would have been a need to discuss, first of all, behind us with the leadership before even coming to the well, so that you hear the position of the leadership, you hear what are their grievances, and together, you massage the situation, you come up with a way forward. You iron all your differences behind us, so that when you come to the well of Parliament, these issues will not come, and this awful situation will not have ordered well. You see, I've always said that everybody in Parliament is equal in the sense that they are representing their constituency, but they are also representing their nation. The opposition will not just oppose because of opposition's sake. The government bench do not also use their numbers or their powers also to muzzle. So it's all about compromise, consultation, respect, give and take. Sometimes we look at the temperature in the parliament and just decide to adjourn or to step down parliament for a few minutes so that you go and consult temper's right. I remember in the last parliament when we were confronted with that, the late Honorable Ibrahim Sise, you know, he will laugh, he will be calm, he will listen to us, but he knows where he's going. He knows what he's meant to achieve. So he would sometimes want to speak and say, adjourn this parliament, the temperature is hot. I never had him raise his voice against any member, although we knew that he was now APC, having moved from SLPP to APC. And he very much knew that and aware of that. And therefore ensure that, you know, what happens in the well of the parliament is as much a responsibility of how the principal advanced that to the speaker behave or say or don't say, or the advice to give to the speaker. I remember also there was a time when we also had a very serious impact. Ms. Ali, of blessed memory, myself, Bintumani. We confronted him. They asked our leader, Emmanuel Somi, to go for a meeting. We stopped. He said, no, we had asked for this meeting, you will just agree. Our leader will not go, you know. And we went, and we even took the document from, but he was laughing. He was talking, he was calm. At the end of the day, you know, we have to settle this because we have to put our country first.
Honorable Bernadette Lahai, now in your opening statement, you made it clear that you are very disappointed with the way parliamentarians acted. And this is not the first time we've seen such scenes in Parliament. Remember at the opening of Parliament a year and a half or 2 years ago, we saw similar violent scenes occurring in the well of Parliament. And there have not been disciplinary actions for those who disrupt parliamentary sittings like this. So do you think that parliamentarians should face consequences when they behave like this in the well of Parliament?
That is why you don't want to set precedents. You don't want to set precedents. The question is, what disciplinary actions we are taking in the last parliament? When 2 years ago, on the day that the speaker was being elected, did anybody face the law? Did anybody pay for their action? I know there has to be a starting point. That is why we should avoid these things. Parliament is a house of talking. Parliament means in Latin or French, so talk. You talk, you jaw, with a view to arriving at a consensus. But even when you don't arrive at a consensus, somebody wins and somebody loses. These are all parliamentary actions. But what we are saying that we have 3 arms of government. Each one should know their role and should be willing and ready to carry that within the principles of the law. When that happens, then we are moving for chaos. The executive should have laid all these documents before now. But even late as those documents were, once it gets to Parliament, leadership of Parliament also has a role to play. And besides, you know, everybody has rights in Parliament to talk. You cannot stop, you put up a microphone of a leader. But all the presence of the arm of the police really heightens the situation. heighten the temperature, and already there was security threat. So what I want this parliament to do, this has happened. Parliament should go back to the drawing board and now see what all our procedures have been breached and what are the consequences. I know that the standing order is under review, and I hope that also our constitution, which is the overarching law, will also soon be made into a new law, so that some of these things will be addressed there. But if you are now going to take punitive action, do you have to go back 2-3 years to also take similar punitive action against those who would have been culprits, or even many years down the line? What punitive measures do you take against the executive?
So what do you suggest as we round up this conversation now? We do know that opposition members do have reservations regarding the census itself and the processes that took place in what they would say is the Well of Parliament at Bintumani on Monday. Honorable Ibrahim Bundu has made it clear that opposition members still have a chance to raise their points and make the changes that they require. But what do you suggest could be done to make this situation better?
As I said, so that I tell the truth. There is no forgiveness without penalty. People want to be forgiven. You have to realize, first of all, that there was a breach. It is human to err. But at the soul, that is the beginning. Let whoever has breached the law recognize and agree that, yes, it happened. In fact, there is any justification. Last year, we had Ebola, we had Corona. Corona was, so the effect and the prophecy internationally was said that every government was on their toes. So that would make sure that you oversight other things. Maybe, for example, laying all of these documents now that should have been laid maybe 9 months, 8 months. So these are all the context. But it has happened and somebody must take responsibility. Yes, once that happens, I want the parliament to go back again. Let them go to their Ifale. Certain things cannot be dealt with in the West. It has to be dealt with behind it, in the corridor. And then you can abuse each other, you can even fight and all those things outside of the public view. But at the end of the day, you come up with an amicable solution to the satisfaction of all. And then you move. So for me, let the leadership come together. Let them quietly, respectfully, objectively, and reasonably also, both the opposition and the government, put their point. Let them give and take. Let them move forward so that there's that understanding, so that they can go forward.
All right,
the census important. The census is important. Did we get all the information that we are supposed to have in 2015? Well, we thought we had, but now we are being told that we don't have. And now the world is going digital. Another reason is that we need to digitize our census, our population, all those things, in order for us to be able to have a good development plan. I have not against it, but the procedure is what we should always. Parliament, an institution of procedure, of rules, of standing order, of what? You can even fight your own standing orders. For you to move your activities, there's nothing wrong with that. There is provision for that. So for me, let people calm down. Everybody, in one way or the other, has had their say. And everybody can have their way. But it depends on the approach. The respect for each other is important. Government should listen to opposition. Opposition should also listen to government. Both of them should not be dismissive of each other. Either one using their numerical strength or their legislative powers of power. No, it's not going to work. So for me, there's still a chance. Let Parliament calm down. Let everybody go back to the drawing board. Let those who have had, who need to apologize, and then move forward for the sake of our country. But this week has been, very emotional. It's not only what has happened in Parliament. There are other things that are happening all over the country that does not offer well for our peace, for our development, and all of those things. Leadership should look into this and see, how they can have a conversation, how they can be tolerant and include and not dismissive and arrogant, about some of these things.
Well, so thank you very much.
You are in government. Tomorrow you will be in opposition. The other time you will be in government again. The other time you will be in opposition. But what I'm saying is that, what is wrong when you were in opposition? When you are in government and it is wrong, it should be wrong. What is wrong or what is correct when you are in government? When you become opposition and the same thing happens, it should be wrong or it should be right, as the case may be.
All right, quickly, Madam Lahai, before we let you go, you're talking about what is people should be doing, political parties should actually be doing what is right. Because quoting Honorable KKY, he was saying bad precedents that are taken by political or ruling governments will also be like an example for upcoming bad governments, and they will actually do the same. So let's quickly talk about the issue of retributive politics that is, most people will say, is happening in Sierra Leone. What do you think is the way forward? How can this be fixed?
The way forward, as I said, is that when you are in leadership, you have to be careful the type of laws you promulgate. If you promulgate good laws, you don't only stand to benefit, but the whole country stands to benefit. If you promulgate bad laws because you think at that moment you are in power, you are in the seat of power, they will want you. It doesn't matter how long, because no political party is going to be in governance for the rest of their life. We have seen what has happened in the sub-region. Those heads of state who have gone first term, second term, third term, fourth term, one day nemesis caught up with them. The people will rise up against them. We've just seen what has happened in Chad. So when you are in parliament and you are in government, every law you make should be consistent with it. You will stop and ask yourself, how will this law promote peace? How will this law bring about sustainable development? How will this law bring social cohesion? You ask yourself. If it doesn't, then go back to the drawing board. This is what has been happening.
Okay.
So when we are in parliament or as a governing body or an opposition, you have to be mindful the laws you promulgate. Because at the end of the day, if you make good laws, you will stand to benefit. If you make bad laws, one day it will catch up with you.
Okay.
And this is what is happening. But as I said, we have room for amendment. We have room to make things better. What is important is the will. Because at the end of the day, it is not maybe the parliamentarians or the top government officials that suffer. It is the small man, the poor man, who lives on $1 or less a day. The poor man who has limited access for good health services, limited access to education, who has limited access to food security. It is that poor man, that poor woman, that poor child that suffers at the end of the day. You say then, well, two big elephants fed. Now the grass, now they suffer.
Okay.
And that is what we profess. When a government is put in power, it's a social contract. I will be your president. I will be your leader. I will be your government. I will do A, B, C, and D. And then in turn, the people also should have a responsibility and obligation. You love them, you provide for them, then they continue to have allegiance to you, to your country.
Thank you so much for joining.
We have to.
All right, Ma. Well, with that, we say thank you so much for joining us in the program this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm in Java. So, don't hesitate to call me.
All right. Thank you very much.
Honorable Bundu, you've heard from Bernadette Lahai. As we're rounding up this session now, what would be your suggestion in terms of the census that has been proposed and the conduct of parliamentarians?
Well, I think she had said a lot in line with what I've been saying, and her conclusion is very, very encouraging. I think I will want to join her to say leadership is about management of relationships. If me and Bernadette are still in this kind of parley after we left parliament, she was in the opposition, I was in when we first met, she was in the government in 2002, and we worked to a point. I became the majority leader and she became the minority leader. But in spite of all that, because we manage our relationship very well, we are the best of friends, irrespective of, because those are roles. She was paid the same amount I was paid as leader. So if we are at peace, the country will benefit. So I want to encourage the current leadership to rise up to the occasion that you have to make sure there is peace, there is decorum. Processes and procedure must be followed. Even if you want to break the law, make sure they have a very good word in parliament. Lobby your people. Even when you have the numbers, but when you lobby them, good word, and they pull cola. Let the government bench, review their approach. Definitely, like for the speaker, I know his experience is from, he was a member of parliament during the 1978 constitution. That has to do with one-party states and parliamentary system of government. So this is the 1991 constitution. It has a super way. You have the hybrid that combines the Washington style of governance and the Westminster. So all of those things. And the clerk, you have to revisit your role. I know we all know where you belong, but that is not to say, I hate to see him on radio talking about the APC, talking about other political parties. That is not for you for now as a clerk. That's the role of the majority leader or anybody he wants to assign. So let us manage our relationships. If we manage our relationship well, I believe there will be peace.
All right.
If a circumstance arises, they say, let us talk. I don't see any harm. Nobody calls for a fight.
Okay.
Say, let us talk. So let us continue the
Thank you for joining us. It's been an interesting conversation. Let's still wake up Sierra Leone on AYV television, channel 33, and also on radio 101.7.
Yes, subscribe. You always dey watch we program them, but you not subscribe yet to the channel. All wetin you get for do, press this red subscribe button, and then you come over here and press this bell. To the bell option, press this one with all. E don done. E no get for cost you anything. When you do this, na sign for show say you dey support we for make we do more. Thank you for we don help we for share this program. Yeah, God bless you.